Now, joining me now for more on this story is Jan Egeland. He's the Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Egeland. Now, clearly, the situation in the Central African Republic is getting worse. Do you think, I mean, this is an area that doesn't get much attention. Do you think that is one of the reasons?
I do think it's one of the reasons. It's a forgotten and neglected place, and a forgotten and neglected conflict, really, taking place in the heart of Africa. Some 5 million civilians there in a terrible shape. 80% of the land is under the rule of armed opposition groups, of militias. So the population is under enormous strain. They are being attacked from right and left. The government in this capital city is not able to provide them services, and the UN peacekeeping force is under-resourced, overstretched, and is not proactively helping to protect the civilian population.
You describe a very dire situation there. As you said, 87% of the people are surrounded there by rebels. What difference would increased funding make, or what exactly is needed to turn things around?
Well, a renewed attention to the place. In 2016, there was a very positive, upbeat conference in Brussels, where the European Union, the African Union, the United Nations, the donor countries said, we have learned from the neglect in the Central African Republic. It unraveled in a horrific civil war. There were refugees all over. It destabilized the neighboring country. So now we will rebuild peace and development in that place. And for a while, there were some positive signs of improvements. This has unraveled. So what we and the Norwegian Refugee Council, after my visit there recently, is calling is that precisely the African Union, the European Union, and the United Nations need to call a new conference and say, let's look each other in the eyes and say, we are failing in the Central African Republic, and before it's too late, let's have more funding for humanitarian work, more development aid, a better and more proactive peacekeeping force, and a real peace process supported by the neighboring countries that are not necessarily supporting this. They are, some of them, bringing fuel to the fire.
Mr. Egeland, I want to ask you a very practical question. I sit here day after day talking about crises like Yemen, looking also what's happening in Syria. Yemen is called, the world's biggest humanitarian disaster. How do you divide your time, or how would you then divide attention between the Central African Republic and a place like Yemen, for example?
Well, we have to. Number one, is the whole world going to hell? No, there are 190 nations on Earth. And we have tremendous crisis in a dozen of these 190 nations. So if you like, 170 nations need to help that dozen nations. I tried to prioritize not only the mega crises that get attention, like Syria and Yemen. We try also to focus on the neglected emergencies. Central African Republic is one of those. Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is another one. South Sudan, also in the same neighborhood, a third one. They need also our attention, and they need us to stay with them, help pull in the right direction, have more presence there, be there with women, children, and others who are so vulnerable on their own.
Mr. Egeland, I wish you the best of luck with your endeavours. That was Jan Egeland, Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, speaking to us. Thank you.